the taser. Guys are on that day with Sergeant Ingram, right?
Acting Sergeant Ingram, yes.
So it was a good thing, or an appropriate thing at least, for him to call the sergeant telling him he's going down with the taser shotgun, right?
Yes.
My understanding is that, your understanding is he got a phone call originally over the phone from APD dispatch, right?
Yes.
Okay, they wanted a taser shotgun, is that correct?
Yes.
That's your understanding as well. He responds, okay, I'll come en route. And he has do you know what kind of unit he was driving at the time?
Like a car? I think he had a pickup truck.
Yeah, and all the gear for a rope detective is in that pickup truck, isn't it?
Yes.
The vest that he's wearing, the uniform that he's wearing, that's all already in the truck, right?
Yes.
And so your understanding is he starts heading, and he lives on the other side of the Sandia Mountains, doesn't he?
I don't know if he does now. I believe he did then.
Okay. And your understanding was that he needed to travel to town,
Yes.
and he headed through the canyon doing that, right?
Yes.
And you're familiar that on the other side, I don't know if you are or not, are you familiar that on the other side of the mountain, the APD radio doesn't even work?
To a certain distance, you will lose communications.
Okay. So do you know whether or not, even if Keith wanted to, he could even use a radio on that side of the mountain?
Not till you're past Tahara's going towards the city.
Okay. So your understanding is once he's en route driving, then he gets a phone call from APD dispatch again, correct?
Yes.
And APD dispatch says, you know what, we made a mistake. It wasn't you that Sergeant Carpenter wanted. He wanted us to call out gangs because they have a taser shotgun. Is that your understanding?
The request from Sergeant Carpenter was specific to the gang unit or gangs.
But on the first call, the APD dispatcher didn't tell that to Mr. Sandy, did they?
I don't believe so.
On the second phone call, he learned that and he was already en route, correct?
Correct.
And he basically informed APD dispatch that, you know what, I'm already en route. You don't need to, call someone else off for their Sunday or on call. I'm already headed that way. I'll do it, right?
Yes.
Anything wrong with that, sir?
Stuff like that's happened before where, someone will go en route and tell someone else, hey, I got this. You don't have to worry about it.
So he was doing a nice thing for a fellow officer who he didn't even know was on call, right? The gang person, is that correct?
Yeah, again, it's not uncommon to call somebody off.
Okay. So then let me ask you if this statement is a true statement. Canine officers get called, Weimerskirch and Roseanne, that Keith Sandy called them.
Again, the request came from Sergeant Carpenter. I know that while speaking with Keith Sandy, he said that he wanted K-9 to be requested, and they got on the radio with K-9 and talked to them over the radio.
But Sergeant Carpenter had already called out for K-9, right?
Yes, he made that request, and it was on the CAD.
Keith Sandy never spoke directly to a K-9 officer to come out, right?
He spoke to K-9, I believe, over the radio, but again, I don't know what the conversation was.
But not to call them out, though, right?
I think they were already en route.
After already en route.
Yes, I believe so.
So, would you agree with this statement? Sandy, Weimerskirch, Ingram are the ones that sort of arrive at the scene and start making decisions and telling people what to do. That's not true, is it?
When they arrived on the scene, they worked together, and they did discuss about options, about a plan, what they could do.
Listen to my question. Ingram, Sandy, Weimerskirch, Ingram are the ones that sort of arrive at the scene and start making decisions and telling people what to do.
Yeah, I don't think they were telling all the officers what to do.
So, by the way, Keith Sandy, when asked to, turned in his lapel, or his camera card, the video card for the camera, right?
Yes.
What's that card called?
It's an SD card?
An SD is a dog?
Yes.
SD card. Keith turned it in, right?
It was collected that night, yes.
Turns out, though, that the camera didn't capture any footage on that SD card. Is that correct?
Not of that incident, no.
But when asked, he voluntarily gave that right in. And
Yes, it was collected from him.
the statement about this whole, this response to the Hill where Mr. Boyd was, the statement, Sandy's been the one that sort of organized all this. That's not true, is it?
No, he was not the sole person that organized all this.
So you just told the court today that it was Officer McFarland that actually called down the CIT officer from that hill, right?
Over the radio, that is correct.
And Officer McFarland is with the SWAT team, right?
Yes.
So tell me what you think of this statement, if it's accurate. Although even the SWAT team, when there's already a CIT officer talking, doesn't pull the CIT officer down. That's not true, is it?
I'm sorry, could you say that first part again?
Sure. Although even the SWAT team, when there's already a CIT officer talking, doesn't pull the CIT officer. The SWAT team pulled the CIT officer, didn't they?
Yeah, Officer Jeff McFarland.
Who was part of that SWAT team, correct?
Yes.
I'd like to talk to you about Exhibit 1 of the states. I'm going to try it on the Elmo, Your Honor, if I can. That's already been admitted. States Exhibit 1. Okay. Can you see that, Detective?
Yes.
Do you see H, immediate threat?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to ask you, based on your training experience, when it says, and your investigation, if you will, it says intent. Do you see that the suspect demonstrates his or her intent to resist being controlled or to inflict physical injury, e.g. gives pre-assault indicators?
Yes.
Okay. By the way, just to make sure we're clear, this is the procedural order, and I'm just going to put this on, this is the first page, on use of force, right?
Yes, it was APD's policy for use of force at the time.
Okay. Now, at the time, this helps all of you officers understand what the articulable threat is, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and intent. So based on right before Mr. Boyd was shot, did he demonstrate his or her intent to resist being controlled or inflict physical injury? It's not the ultimate issue. Did he do that?
Yes, he did.
Okay. And then means and opportunity. The subject is physically capable of carrying out the perceived threat and is in a position to do so. On that split second before he was shot, was Mr. Boyd, in fact, did he in fact have the means and opportunity to stab Officer Weimerskirts?
Yes, he did.
Now, my understanding is that, and I think we just saw this in a much more much probably better electronic way, but using the Elmo here, Do you see there where it's at 1823? James has an extensive criminal history of aggravated battery on police officers. We just went through that to
Yes.
some extent, correct?
Yes.
And actually, before that, or simultaneously, or before that's actually written, those comments were relayed over the air too, right?
Yes, they were.
So the police officers listening to their radio at that point on the scene or en route to the scene actually heard basically that same thing. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you've verified that because you've listened to that and you've looked at the CAD and they're consistent with each other, right?
Yes.
And your understanding is that when Mr. Sandy arrived, he arrived where, and he met up with an old friend of his, Sergeant Ware. Is that correct?
Yes.
Sergeant Ware was with state police, right?
Yes.
And it was brought out in direct a couple of days ago that they're old friends and they've known each other for some time, right?
Yes, I believe so.
You'd agree with me that they started bantering back and forth some, didn't they?
Yes.
Okay. And Mr. Sandy had asked, Keith Sandy had asked why the state police was there, right?
Yes.
And he said for this guy up on the hill, and Keith Sandy actually used some foul language, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
He said, for this fucking lunatic, did he say that?
Yes.
Okay, and then he said, I'm going to go up in a second and shoot him with a taser shotgun, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, not the best of language choice, right?
No.
But nonetheless, he had just been advised of the gentleman's mental instability for sure, right?
Objection, Your Honor. I don't think it can establish that Sandy heard those drinking.
Sure. Do you know whether or not, I think you talked about it in direct, that Keith Sandy had informed you of what he had heard over the radio as far as somewhat of Mr. Boyd's history, right?
That's correct.
Okay, and that included the things that are listed that we've just gone over. If we need to put them back up, we will, but specifically, that included a criminal history of aggravated battery on peace officers, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, he knew, and it also said that he was suffering from paranoid schizophrenia, and schizophrenia, I can't say the word, but schizophrenia, right?
Yes.
Okay. So then, he says this language, and then he says, and I'm going to go up and shoot him with a taser shotgun in a second, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, based on everything that's been reported to this point, we know the man has pulled 2 knives on 2 police officers, right?
Yes.
We know the man has a violent criminal history and is mentally unstable, correct?
Yes.
We know that he has been asked numerous times at this point to put down the knives and he won't do it, right?
Correct.
We know that he's threatened to kill police officers at this point, right?
Yes.
Now, knowing that, it would be authorized use of force to shoot someone with a taser shotgun to bring them into compliance, right?
If that situation arises, yes.
If it continued, if someone had to be brought into detained or arrested, and they had done all these things, the use of a taser shotgun, knowing all those things and knowing the circumstance, would not be an unjustified use of force, would it?
No.
Now, you've heard those words, and you heard the context in which they were said to Sergeant Ware, right?
Yes.
Okay. When you heard that, you never inferred that Keith Sandy had some intent to murder James Boyd, did you?
Objection, improper question.
He's the lead investigator. And she's opened the door by asking for intent earlier. She asked him what the intent was in direct. Sure. Okay. So, misplaced. Well, the use of force SOP that we were just going through, it's State's Exhibit 1.
Yes.
You remember this, the use of force?
Yes.
Okay. You didn't find any provision that Keith Sandy violated, did you?
As far as the use of force,
Yes.
no.
Now, what was Keith Sandy's one and only job on that hill immediately preceding Mr. Boyd being shot?
He was providing lethal cover for Officer Scott Weimer-Scourge.
Now, you just testified earlier that apparently, I think you testified, if I heard you right, that perhaps Mr. Weimer-Scourge closed ground a little too quick.
That he did.
And that was a mistake on his part, you believe?
Yes, it was a mistake on his part.
Okay. You've been a veteran, you've been a police officer for a lot of years now. How many years total?
As a police officer?
Yes.
Over 9 years.
Okay. When a fellow police officer makes a mistake like that and he goes up that hill when he shouldn't be following right behind that dog, same kind of situation. You just let him go and say, I know I'm lethal cover, but sorry, you're on your own?
Objection, ultimate issue, Your Honor.
That's not the ultimate issue. Do you just let him go?
No. It's your responsibility to cover him.
Even if he's making a mistake getting too close?
You try to, if you can, try to prevent him from getting that close if it's at all possible, but still your responsibility is to keep coverage of him and make sure that he's safe.
And that goes with him even if he is getting too close to an armed subject, right? Your job is always to make sure he's safe, right?
Yes.
And that's your only job, right?
Yes.
In fact, that's your sworn duty, isn't it?
Yes.
Just a moment, Your Honor.